This is a really great tool. If you don't have one of these, you can take with your fettling knife and visualize a 45-degree angle, and then cut said 45-degree angle. The way I keep that is by seeing this distance from here to here, and I just cut and slice through and make sure that the tip is at the edge here. And then I can make a pretty decent 45-degree angle cut that way. But this tool is nice because it does all that work for me as long as I line my clay up here. The only problem with this one is at the end sometimes it grabs and it pulls the clay off. So all you have to do is pull. So I put my thumb at the end to cut the clay with the wire, so the wire hits my thumb, and then it doesn't do that like shredded thing as much. And then I'll do all the walls on this first one. Don't do all the walls on every piece of clay, because this, now that it's thinner, is going to dry out more. And so when you get to the end of your box, it's going to be already too dry to attach together. I've seen it happen many a time. See, that's the only drawback. It got stuck on this, this thing. If that happens, then maybe work on the table. But just if it's too wet, you just don't want it to get stuck to the table. So this does dry things out as well. So if you notice things are getting too dry, stop working on it. It's up to you to figure out what your clay needs. Another biblical analogy. All right, so now that this one's finished, I'm just gonna do this one. So you can start with your first two, cutting all four sides. Save these, they'll come in handy in a few minutes. And then I'm gonna do what we call scoring and score. You want the score lines to be pretty close, like a 1/16 of an inch close to each other. The 1/16 of an inch is the smallest marking on a ruler, an American ruler. It's kind of close to 1.5 centimeters, about, give or take. My students know centimeters better than I do, so I'm looking to them for approval. And then you're gonna do both sides. I wouldn't do all four sides of each one, just the two you're gonna attach together. So I'm actually cross-hatching. If any of you have done drawing, you'll know what cross-hatching is. And then you're just gonna paint this into your score mark. And then with clean, dried hands, not wet ones, because then they'll stick to the piece. See, this is what I was concerned about. It got stuck a little bit. You're gonna just push this back in, squeeze it together and jiggle it. I'm gonna put this back on my fabric so that it doesn't get stuck on the table, which would be the worst thing that can happen, because it's impossible to get it off the table. All right. So what I'm gonna do now, once I've jiggled it into position, I'm kind of also spreading this into the back here. So I'm like compressing the clay. So I'm gonna score again like this, but this time when I score, I only score like in one direction coming up. And then what I'm gonna do is take these little pieces that I told you guys to hold on to, and I'm gonna make them into coils. And then I'm gonna take the coil, and then I'm gonna put my thumb on the back side like this, on the back, and I'm gonna push the clay reinforcement coil into that crack. So basically I put my thumb back here and I pull this back into place. And then what I can do, because there's little cracks and crevices, I'll take the back of my thumbnail, keeping my thumb on the back, and I'll pull that to kind of even the crease out and make it really round and pretty, instead of like goopy and weird. I have a lot of students just put a piece of clay in there and they push it in like that, and then it like looks bad, honestly. So try not to do that. Spend a little bit of time mastering the technique. Let's get our other piece of clay ready. So now that that's all put together, we're gonna take another piece out of our bag and we're gonna do the cutting again. And I'm gonna move the cloth out of the way so it doesn't get stuck in the cloth again. Remember keeping your thumb on the back so that it cuts the clay instead of tearing off. So the next thing you're gonna do is score this again. And again, if you feel these start to dry out, please move your cloth out of the way or put them like to the side while you're working on them. All right, so you're gonna jiggle that back into position and now just try and make sure that everything is square and not like lopsided or like weird. And then you're gonna do the same thing and you're gonna do this to every single side. And then when I do this to the back, I pinch it like this as I'm scoring. So I'll show you that. So I pinch the back as I score up, just as a reinforcement so I don't tear my wall out. And then again the coils. And don't forget when you put the coil in to put some slip into those areas that you're adding. Put the coil in, squish with your thumb in the back, and then scrape with your thumbnail until it's nice and smooth. You can flip it over because at this point it's not going to fall apart because you have so much reinforcement in there. Again, squish it in, take your thumbnail and pull it out. So basically what you're going to do is finish this whole thing. You're not going to put in the coil here because you're just putting the top on. So at the end you'll have your box together, right? Like so. Oops. And then this is the part that you're going to attach last. And you won't be able to put reinforcement coils into that. So I'll show you what to do after that. So once you have your last piece slipped and scored, see I've done the whole inside, all of the reinforcement on the inside, then I'm just going to put the box lid on top. And we can't reinforce this, right? Because there's like nothing in there. So I'm just kind of pinching it first and compressing it with my fingers on either side. What you don't want to do is do this when it's really wet because then you'll get this weird crease and it'll go out on the sides, like, you know, like get too thin. So you just want it more like that, just kind of resting. And then what we're going to do is take our paddle and then we're going to lightly tap it. And this is going to help compress, and you can tap on almost all sides. Well, all sides. Just lightly tap. This is just compressing it better. Because compression makes your clay stronger. It might help to keep track of which side is the bottom. But it doesn't really matter because when you open it, you'll realize, oh, this one side doesn't have like the reinforced walls, and then you'll just add the reinforcement in after you open this up. So this got a little jaggedy, like a little off. There we go. So it might help to leave it on the table and kind of like make sure you're keeping it square instead of what I was doing earlier. Just don't do this so much that it becomes like a little tiny box. That would be sad. So I've lost track of which side's the top. I'm going to do a weird box, and you can do any kind of box. You could just cut it straight off. Or what I'm going to do this semester, which I've never done, is I'm going to cut it this way. I'm going to add a slab back into this. This is going to become my bottom. So if you want to do this, all you have to do is take one of your slabs that you kept, take a piece, put it on here, hopefully it's the same size, and then basically, can you see? Basically cut this at the same angle as your box. Turn it, do the same thing. I'm just sliding my knife down the side and then I'm sliding through the clay. And we can fix it and finish it later, but that's gonna be your bottom. So just like with everything, we need to take this off and then we need to score this. I don't want this to get too thick, so I'm actually gonna cut it a little bit like this. It's not like 100% matched yet. It looks kind of weird. I'm just gonna tap that lightly. So then you're gonna take your tool and kind of cut it like this. If for some reason you're having a hard time keeping your piece very square and it's starting to like blob out, one reason for that could be your clay needed to set a little bit longer. And one thing you can do is just stop working and let it set for a little bit. The other thing you can do is get yourself a wood rib. This is a good wood rib because it has like a 90-degree angle and it's flat on one side. So you can just kind of keep your wood rib at like kind of a parallel angle to the clay. It also helps to have a metal rib to smooth it together more. This does more compression. The metal rib will do more cleaning up. But this will be our first step to cleaning this up. All right, so now that looks pretty good, but it's again not reinforced right on the inside. We just have it paddled to compress it a little bit. So now it's gonna stand like that. So now I'm gonna open the box lid. So I'm just gonna do a straight lid. And a flange is basically a piece of clay that keeps your lid from jiggling off. You can just cut a piece off your slab, right? A different piece off the remaining remnants that you have, and you can flatten it. You want this to be at least 1/8 of an inch and less than 1/4 inch thick. So when I'm measuring it, I want this to be a little bit less than 1/4 inch, okay? So then I'm gonna score my wall, pretending this is the lid. It's better to put this on the lid. Scoring my wall, which is here, or here. And then I'm gonna score, I'm probably gonna cut this. You can also use your needle tool to cut. I'm gonna score here. And then I'm gonna use my slip. I don't know where my brush went to. You can use your fingers if for some reason a brush is not available. Oh, here it is. Thanks. And then you're just gonna press the flanged part into the lid. Let's just make it look more like a lid there. Perfect, right? And then, so the next thing you're gonna do is get rid of all the little pieces of clay that are like sticking out. Okay. And then you're gonna put a reinforcement coil on the inside of the flange on the wall of the lid. Again, 16th inch score marks. Coil. Lay that in. A lot of people forget to put the reinforcement on their flange when they're doing the added flange instead of the inset flange. I'm just gonna put that back down so you can see what I'm doing. Another thing to remember while you're doing this is not to press too hard, because you don't want this to come over the edge, because what's gonna happen is this needs to go inside of that. And then I can cut with the 45 degrees all the way through until I get to my thumb. But I also don't want the knife going through into this wall. So now the blade is basically slicing halfway through this angle here. And then I'm gonna do that whole process all over again. Hopefully, if you did it right, it'll come off easy. If not, you'll have to cut some more. Oh, there it is. So it's not perfect, right? But without doing too much cutting and stuff, you can kind of take off the crumbles just so they don't get in the way. You don't want to change the shape or anything of this. Don't crush it in your hand, because then it won't fit back on. And it also might help to know exactly how you took it off so that you can put it on the correct way to see, like, that's not fitting. So before you cut, maybe put a line into your piece that shows you, like, okay, that's where it matches. And if you want to put that into your design when you end up doing your texture, so that the texture somehow matches, so you know which way your lid fits, that would be cool. So I know how that fits now. And then I'll just clean up some of this. And now this is a very small hole to do the rest of the reinforcement, but as much as possible, you're gonna try and get inside and look and see where you were unable to reinforce. So for me, it's this whole area in here I was unable to reinforce. So I'm just gonna hold it like this. I'm gonna put my little needle tool in there, score on the inside into the crack, and do the reinforcement just like I did before, but this is gonna be a lot more difficult because I have no room. But it's important to do, because otherwise this might fall apart in the kiln if you don't have the proper reinforcement. It'll just like crack apart. Because when the clay is, first of all, drying, there's a lot of tension in the clay as it dries because it's shrinking. So if you have any thick walls and thin walls, the thick walls take longer to dry and the thin walls dry faster. So what happens is, like, you have this thin thing pulling on this thick thing, and that causes tension that causes it to break. That's why everything should be about the same thickness. And if you don't reinforce things and there's even a slight fluctuation in thickness, it can crack it apart. That's why reinforcement really helps, because it takes some of that shrinkage pressure off. So try as much as possible to do all of your reinforcing. That's the end of my